So basically I handed out the balik. For some reason it was intense, really intense.
Urgent news, and this is about Russia, which changed absolutely everything.
You can't see it, but you can definitely hear it.
February instead reached the boiling point, and it all started.
There, the plume is spreading. You know, there's this white cloud right in the middle between two villages. It hit the oil refinery, basically, and then it went out. Everything just stopped. They woke us up in the middle of the night. Yeah, it was...
Well, the air defense worked well. It's unclear, really scary. Thank goodness nothing worse happened yet.
Urgent news. Besides the destruction by the armed forces of Ukraine, Putin's dacha was also demolished. Russia is in hysteria, the occupiers are fleeing. Rare aircraft have turned into scrap, something that has never happened before. A triumph for Ukraine. This operation drove the Russian Federation's archives into hysteria. Ukrainian drones have done the incredible. A final breakthrough deep into Russia. Airports have come to a halt. Putin's oil empire is burning. A shockingly powerful earthquake struck the enemy's territory. Even nature itself is striking Russia. This could be the beginning of the end. Hello, I'm Darina Hutskalo, and in our episode of Red Line, we'll cover all the explosive events. Watch until the end. An emergency apocalypse in Crimea. The Ukrainian armed forces have brought chaos to the occupied peninsula. Our strikes have destroyed the Foros sanatorium. Massive explosions followed the drone attacks. The head of the occupation administration, Aksyonov, is in a panic. The Russians were completely stunned by all this commotion.
This is what the aftermath of the drone attack on the Forest School looks like from the outside. According to an eyewitness, the drone itself flew through the entire second floor of the building, and it crashed here onto the sports field. Here we can see fragments of the drone scattered everywhere.
The assembly hall of the school suffered the most damage, and here part of the ceiling has collapsed. Just look at what's left of one of the walls. According to local authorities, the facilities of the sanatorium and even the school in the village have been destroyed. It is already known that dozens have been injured. Among them, there are fatalities. Emergency services are barely coping, and while the fires from the drone debris are being extinguished, they are spreading to Yalta.
Unfortunately, there are injured and dead. Currently, the number of injured is about 15 people, and the number of fatalities is being clarified. Also, due to the fall of debris from a downed drone, a dry grass fire broke out in the area of Yalta. Specialized services are working at the scene. All necessary assistance is being provided to the people. I am keeping the situation under my personal control.
It has become known that, in fact, the explosions hit the FSB dacha where Putin likes to relax. Monitoring channels report that a government building was struck. According to rumors circulating online, a classified event in Foros was shut down.
A strike hit the Foros sanatorium, as our source reported, around 7:30 p.m. According to him, there were very important guests at the sanatorium. The sanatorium's website states that on the 21st of August, the Foros Hall restaurant is closed for special service.
It is reported that between Foros and Yalta, there are 4 state dachas located. Since Soviet times, the political elite have come here. The Russian publication Progt conducted an investigation and found out that Putin occupied 2 of them at once. But it's not just Putin's dacha that's under fire. Ukrainian intelligence has made history. For the first time, unique Russian aircraft have been destroyed. The fighters of Ukraine's defense intelligence, Crimea, unleashed a real Armageddon in the skies over Crimea. In a lightning-fast operation, they took down 2 rare B-12 Chaika anti-submarine amphibious aircraft at once and also destroyed a multi-purpose Mi-8 helicopter belonging to the occupiers. The B-12 Chaika is not just a Soviet relic from the 1960s, but a true monster capable of taking off from both land and water. Its purpose is to hunt submarines, drop torpedoes, and depth charges. But now this bird has turned into a heap of burning scrap metal. Despite its respectable age, the B-12 remained the pride of Russian naval aviation. But due to its rarity and the complexity of its maintenance, it was considered a true treasure by Moscow. But Ukraine has taken from Russia something that will never return. Now only wreckage and ashes remain. Drones have also set things ablaze on enemy territory. In the Krasnodar region, things are intense locally.
This is actually not an airplane, just not a helicopter, rather simply.
Because the drones have taken control of the skies over the region. Russian air defense tries to shoot down the targets, while local residents can't help but film everything with pleasure. And here are the first results. 5 hits by Ukrainian defense drones on the Kanivska traction substation in the village of Staroderevyankivska. Meanwhile, the local authorities, as usual, pretend that the situation is under control and report completely different damages.
Fragments of UAVs fell on the territory of 3 private households in Slovyansk in Kuban. The facades and roofs of the houses were damaged and window panes were shattered. Also, due to the falling debris, grass caught fire in the industrial zone. There are no casualties and emergency services are working at the scene.
However, the Russians still failed to hide absolutely everything. The sky over the region had to be urgently closed. The Gulag mode at airports has been officially activated.
About 60 flights are delayed at Sochi airport and 2 flights from Moscow
have been cancelled. There were also incidents overnight in the Yaroslavl region. The drones struck with unprecedented force. The results were not long in coming.
It just happened in an instant, and then you couldn't see anything. You can't imagine how quickly it happened at night. And then everything turned red.
A mysterious glow appeared near the oil refinery. The locals are confused and pretend not to understand what happened. In reality,
look, seriously, it's pitch dark everywhere over there. It's completely dark everywhere, and everything is red.
Some people genuinely don't understand how this could have happened. They say that the powerful air defense was supposed to protect the strategic facility, but something went off plan.
And they will never in their lives believe that the oil refinery is on fire. Never.
Yes, because they have a very good system for shooting down drones.
I don't think so about this refinery, though. But on the other hand, why did the sirens go off?
It affected the Rostov, Belgorod, Astrakhan, Bryansk, Volgograd, Kursk, and Voronezh regions. Residents of these areas got front row seats to a super powerful fireworks show.
Air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 114 Ukrainian fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicles.
However, Russians are no strangers to such entertainment.
At this refinery, in short, there was a real blast. It was intense, seriously.
The drone forces, in coordination with other defense units, delivered a devastating strike on the Novokuybishevsk and Saratov oil refineries.
But apparently not. In short, there's a mushroom cloud forming there. You can see it. A white cloud right in the middle between them. It hit the refinery basically. It just went out completely. They woke us up right in the middle of the night. What is that? Another explosion went off.
Both enterprises are of strategic importance for supplying the Russian army with fuel and lubricants, but that's not all.
Units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine carried out a fire strike on a mainline transport infrastructure facility, the Samara Linear Production Dispatch Station.
After a series of strikes across all of Russia, the sky was torn apart by a blazing mushroom cloud. You have to be the first to see this. Well, it's burning nicely.
It's burning like a candle, really. Nothing else burns like that. It's just burning terribly.
Apparently, Russian air defense forces tried to thwart the plans of unknown drones, but it was all in vain.
And so,
The pleasant bonus from our drones, they attacked Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat in Bashkortostan, 1,300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Impressive footage after the massive drone raid has already appeared online. The drones launched a fiery attack on Volgograd. It is likely that the target of the Ukrainian strike was the local Lukoil oil refinery.
After the explosions, satellite images recorded heat signatures in the area of Lukoil in Volgograd's oil refinery. During the attack, the internet was shut down in the city. The carpet plan was implemented at the airport.
The successful operation was also confirmed by the Special Operations Forces.
The Volgograd oil refinery is used to meet the needs of the enemy's armed forces. This refinery is the largest producer of fuel and lubricants in the southern federal district of the Russian Federation.
Now its operations have been completely halted. Moreover, Russia's problems are not limited to oil. It seems electricity has been affected as well. An important substation in Rostov burned down completely.
Most settlements in the Azov district of Rostov region are without electricity.
Official Rostov partially confirms the incident, claiming that dry grass is burning. What's most interesting is that all this happened right during a raid by friendly drones. However, Russians are already used to living according to a script. More lies, fewer problems. Meanwhile, even nature itself has joined in against the Russian Federation. A powerful earthquake shook Kamchatka. The ground is slipping from under their feet.
A strong earthquake with a magnitude of 7.2 occurred 145 kilometers from Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. A tsunami warning has been issued for the eastern coast of the peninsula.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Rumbling, cracking, and a nervous collapse. Russia is shocked. Could the end of the world really be near?
All emergency services in the region have been put on high alert.
Residents of Russia rushed en masse into the streets, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and chaos and despair reigned in the region.
Everyone is standing, afraid. They're afraid. They went down from the 7th floor? I'm not running anywhere.
The governor of Kamchatka assured that the situation is under control, but residents are advised to stay alert and be prepared for possible aftershocks.
The morning exercise on the ground is done. The morning exercise on the ground is done.
Is that all?
I guess that's all. It all started out calmly.
Moreover, earthquakes are becoming more and more frequent in Russia. For example, on September 13th, Kamchatka was once again shaken by strong seismic activity.
Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, back up. Celestia, it's freezing.
The epicenter is located in the Pacific Ocean, 123 kilometers east of Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky.
Immediately after the breaking news, the coast could be hit by tsunami waves.
There is no longer a tsunami threat. There is no longer a tsunami threat. Wait for further updates from the main directorate of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia for the Kamchatka region. Act in accordance with its warnings.
And now to the list of problems, another failure for the Russian armed forces at the front line. The enemy launched a counteroffensive and Putin's army was noticeably frightened. The triumph of the Ukrainian defenders has reached the dictator himself. In the Kremlin, they're tearing their hair out. Our forces aren't wasting any time and are relentlessly striking the enemy. So on which sections of the front are Russian soldiers forced to flee the battlefield in disgrace? And for which positions are they desperately trying to hold the line? All of this is covered in the following report.
In just a few days, the scale has doubled. The Ukrainian counteroffensive in the Donetsk region continues. According to President Zelensky, 330 square kilometers of territory in Dobropilya and the Pokrovsk area have been returned to the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Of these, more than 170 have already been completely liberated from Russian forces.
It is precisely in the Pokrovsk area that Ukrainian defense forces have deoccupied new territories both economically and successfully. And this is a significant improvement in the tactical successes of Ukraine's defense forces, which has effectively prevented the possibility of tactical gains by the occupiers and the threat of encirclement of our units in the area.
In turn, the strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine have already allowed us to talk about the encirclement of the Russian group, which, instead of the expected blitzkrieg, has suffered more than 2,500 personnel losses on this section of the front alone.
If we look at the map, the strike was delivered practically at the base of the Russian incursion into Ukrainian defenses. In other words, there is a threat of operational encirclement of the Russian occupation forces in this direction.
According to experts, it is in this direction that Russian forces are expected to concentrate their main efforts in the near future. To hold their positions in the region, Russia deployed the 61st Marine Brigade, as well as most of its combat-ready units from the front line.
Yes, clear signs of encirclement are indeed present in the current situation today, and this particular development is very difficult to manage. The reserves that the Russians had planned to use for a completely different purpose are now being thrown in to unblock Russian troops near Dobropilya.
At the same time, it is likely that the Russian command does not yet fully realize the scale of the failure that has occurred in the Donetsk direction. President Zelensky stated that the enemy maps captured during the counteroffensive in Donetsk show that the Russians are simply lying to their leadership and not reporting the real situation on the battlefield. As a result, among other things, they are not receiving the necessary resources, unlike the Ukrainian armed forces.
This counteroffensive operation continues, thanks to the efforts of the 1st Corps of the National Guard Azov, thanks to our assault troops, ground forces, and other involved units. And so these counterattacking actions, the counteroffensive actions of our defense forces, have led to the fact that today we can say that 160 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory have been liberated. I don't recall throughout this entire year or the previous one that such large areas have been liberated.
Obviously inspired by the successes of our assault units, the command of the General Staff decided to designate such groups as a separate branch of the military, which will allow for specialized training focused specifically on storming enemy positions. The corresponding changes are expected to take place by the end of the month.
Accordingly, we have to combine both defense and correspondingly attacks, as well as conducting effective operations both in the enemy's rear and on their flanks. I think such a combination would logically lead to strengthening these troops, but they will not become the only branch of our armed forces. And of course, these are the tasks that I assign. I have still decided that this is the active part of our armed forces, which can carry out operations in the most difficult areas. This includes strikes against the enemy, the localization of breakthroughs, special units prepared for such tasks, and then strikes against enemy units that are breaking through, creating pincers, as you say, pincers that come in from the right and left, for example, in a specific city. Such troops must be able to localize them.
Another hotspot on the front where the Russians are currently especially active remains Kupiansk. According to their statements, almost half the city is already occupied. However, it is reliably known that fighting is ongoing for
now, the situation does not look critical for the Ukrainian army, according to this analyst from SIT. Let's see if the redeployment of the 3rd Assault Brigade, which previously performed other tasks, will help.
At the same time, the Ukrainian defense forces are showing results in other directions as well. For example, the General Staff reported the day before that with drone strikes in Crimea, the troops managed to hit 3 Russian Mi-8 multi-purpose helicopters at once, as well as significantly damage the multi-million-dollar Nebo radar station. Drone operators from the 40th Coastal Defense Brigade near Kherson also distinguished themselves. They spotted Russian assault troops on boats, and it's not hard to guess what happened next. At the same time, our command reports that Russian UAV specialists also took a hit from Ukrainian drones the day before. That very same much-hyped Rubicon, which is supposedly the best at preparing occupiers to work with drones, is temporarily ceasing operations.
This particular unit is widely recognized as one of the most combat-capable and highly effective units currently in existence, and it is consistently and heavily promoted in various forms of media, often showcasing its impressive new drone technologies that we are supposedly meant to be utterly terrified of and compelled to flee from in fear. Yes, Rubicon got hit with some very interesting things. Most likely it was a strike UAV of the Metal Stray class, a type of unmanned aerial vehicle.
And finally, investigators were able to confirm the rumors from 2 weeks ago about the elimination of Russian officers in the Zaporizhzhia region. The liquidation did indeed take place, the identities have been established, and the officers really did die on the spot.
In the area of the village of Voskresenka in the Zaporizhzhia region, which was occupied as a result of a successful joint operation by the main intelligence directorate and the Mariupol resistance, the Russian command post of the 35th Army was completely destroyed by fire. 17 officers and 1 junior officer who were leading the offensive on one of the sectors in the Zaporizhzhia direction were killed. Now, there will be no offensive. The I Want to Live project published a list of the deceased by name and clarified that on August 30th, it is unknown how, but dry grass near the command post of the 35th Army was set on fire. The fire quickly spread to the buildings and even the command post's dugout. And due to the smoke and the filling of the command post with poisonous gas, the operational staff of the headquarters could not escape.
Apparently, or perhaps as a result of such news and the army's failure, this also affected Russian mobilization. Thus, the Center for Countering Disinformation stated that, for the first time, the number of those wishing to terminate their contracts and leave the war in the occupiers' army exceeded those willing to sign up.
It seems that Russia really is losing strength, and this is already visible to the naked eye. The temporarily occupied territories by Russia are gradually being liberated. It's hard to believe this is the final raid. Crimea is engulfed in flames. The Ukrainian armed forces are approaching victory. More details about the first successful operations in the following report.
Crimea under attack. The temporarily occupied peninsula is now the focus of Ukrainian special services. The peninsula has become a nightmare for the enemy, and reports of successful operations by various units are appearing almost every week.
The temporarily occupied Crimean peninsula is turning into another Chornobyivka for the Russian occupiers.
At the beginning of the summer, the security service of Ukraine struck the Crimean bridge for the third time. The underwater supports were severely damaged at the base, aided by 100 kilograms of explosives. In fact, the bridge was in a critical condition. Ukrainian armed forces good drones paid a visit to the Russian invaders' airbase in Hvardiyske, near Simferopol, where they successfully struck 2 enemy Mi-8 helicopters. Their estimated value is up to $30 million, and a Russian tugboat was also hit. Russian ships are also in the crosshairs of Ukrainian special services. For example, the main intelligence directorate destroyed a Black Sea Fleet ship near Novorossiysk. The Ukrainian armed forces struck a ship that the Russians put into service in 2015, with an estimated value of about $60 million.
The Black Sea Fleet has reduced the activity of its operations in the Black Sea Basin to a historic all-time low. This is one of the clearest confirmations of the success of the Ukrainian Defense Forces operations, of the main directorate of the Russian Federation, Ukraine's Defense and Special Operations Forces, at the moment of the destruction of the Black Sea Fleet's vessels. And thanks to the successful actions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, approximately 35% of the Black Sea Fleet's vessels have been destroyed by the Ukrainian resistance community.
And here, special forces struck a Russian radar complex that was part of the S-403 UMF air defense system. Here is another radar station from the S-500 complex. The destruction and even damage of all these radar stations leads to the neutralization of the S-air defense system.
Negative 403. Crimea is now a hunting ground for Russian air defense, and Russia has found itself in a hopeless situation. Crimea is a trap for Russian air defense, which is being systematically and methodically destroyed. And this is because, well, first of all, the territory of the Crimean Peninsula is by its nature enclosed. It's impossible to constantly change the locations of the positional areas, to swap them out like gloves, to move them 24/7.
That is, in a very short period of time, Russian air defense in Crimea has been blinded, and it's simply impossible to quickly resolve the issue of replacing the enemy's systems without pulling similar ones from other sites.
Not only is the combat capability of the peninsula itself being undermined, which has been temporarily occupied, the point is that this is depleting Russia's overall air defense capabilities. That is, within the territory of the Russian Federation itself, the destruction of air defense systems is not such a systematic and constant phenomenon. But it is specifically Crimea, where these systems are being targeted, that has become the focus of a systematic campaign to destroy these complexes, forcing Russia to pull air defense systems from its mainland to the territory of Crimea. This is depletion. This is forcing Russia to act in a way that benefits us so that we can continue to destroy their air defense system.
Over the years of Russian occupation, Crimea has been turned into a Russian military base, but attacks by Ukrainian forces are increasingly destroying the military economy of the aggressor country and its logistics.
Overall, of course, this also applies to the positional areas, the placement of those same air defense systems across the territory, the temporary air defense zones in Crimea, and the same goes for places like Mr. Kankut, Feodosia, the airfields. After all, there are numerous military facilities there connected to military units and so on. There are overall quite a lot of air defense facilities. And as of today, while Crimea continues to be targeted by strikes, whether by kamikaze drones, attack drones, or something more powerful with a more powerful warhead.
Crimea is Ukraine, so the armed forces of Ukraine will continue to strike military facilities and legitimate targets until the Russians leave the peninsula and liberate the temporarily occupied territories.
And most importantly, when do you think Russia will finally be finished off? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit the like button under the video to stay on top of the main updates. We're almost at 470,000 subscribers. There's more to come. See you soon.